Working together on a specific project that's place-based is a way to showcase that reason to believe, and therefore to get others, to encourage others to get on board.
Hello and welcome to the Food Waste Matters podcast. I'm Linda Bonney, a different voice behind the microphone for you as I take off my producer hat and slide into the role of curiosity and intrigue. I'm asking questions alongside Joanne Freeman and Julie Bates today, and if you've been listening along for a while, you'll probably recognise Jo's voice in this episode. Jo and Julie are movers and shakers behind the Reduce and Transform Food Waste project, which is actually a partnership between End Food Waste Australia, who you've also heard within these episodes, and Regional Development Australia, Murraylands and Riverlands, which is RDAMR. It's a mouthful. Also Honey and Fox and Curtin University. The project itself focuses on regional businesses and aims to grow the capacity of small food businesses to reduce and transform their food waste by using a circular economy lens and training frameworks and upskilling in order to address food waste issues. End Food Waste Australia recognised the importance of developing a business case for establishing a national program to be rolled out across regional Australia and have matched investments in order to create a more sustainable and efficient future for food waste management in those regional small business areas. It was such a pleasure for me to find out more, and I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did in recording and producing it. We're going to cut straight to the chase as Joanne starts by giving us an overview of the Cultivating the Capacity of Food Businesses to Reduce and Transform Food Waste Phase 1 project and how it came about.
So in 2020, actually it was, Honey and Fox conducted a survey with End Food Waste Australia where we sort of were wanting to find out how food businesses perceive the need for food waste training and what were their priority areas in the training space and also how they'd like that training delivered. The results for small business from this little piece of research found that, yep, they did need different types of training in different types of format, but the challenge was that businesses do not fully understand or engage in formal food waste training and education. So our project, Cultivating the Capacity of Food Businesses to Reduce and Transform Food Waste, aimed at finding out why this was the case and why RDAMR, which is Regional Development Australia, Murraylands Riverland. I finally got it after all of these months, Julie.
Mouthful.
Well done, Jo.
Short for RDAMR. Yep. They were also a research partner of End Food Waste Australia. This topic was top of mind for them. So you might ask how End Food Waste Australia, Honey and Fox, Regional Development Australia, Murraylands, Riverlands and Curtin University got together as a team to work on this project. Well, all three of us organisations are research partners of End Food Waste Australia. So I'll hand over to Julie to tell you a little bit more about RDAMR.
Okay, well, Regional Development Australia, Murraylands and Riverland, RDAMR, we've done quite a lot of work in this space around circular economy in particular, and in fact it's very bedded down in our vision. Our actual vision for RDAMR, our region, is to be a world-leading circular economy by 2030. It's core to the work that we do in our region, always comes back to. And part of that work took us on a journey of which we are still very much on. And we actually produced a circular economy opportunities report. And this project that we're working on is really come out of some of that work.
So obviously the circular economy is a fairly important aspect of what you do. So why do you think the Murraylands and Riverland is important in bringing forth that research?
Sure. Well, I mean, as a region, we're made up of 6,500 small businesses, and most of those are micro businesses. About 40% of them are agriculture. And just to give you some context around population, for example, 73,000, give or take a bit. And that's going across both Murraylands and Riverland. Obviously, agriculture, as I said, is a huge part of our business makeup, and it's varied. We go from having obviously large cropping areas and livestock through to quite intensive agriculture. Certainly lots of orchards, vineyards, huge almond plantations. We've also got certainly down in the Murraylands area in particular, areas that are doing herbs, chili, tomatoes, very intensive agriculture. And we actually also have a huge amount of value add agriculture. And that was what was really interesting for the project we're actually talking about. So we did work with many of those small food value add businesses. And perhaps, Jo, you can elaborate a little bit more in that space.
Yeah, because there sounds like there's quite a broad cross-section, even just in the regional areas. Absolutely. And so I'm curious to know how you actually tackled the research component in a way that made sure you collected not only the micro businesses but also the larger industries, and made sure that the research was cohesive, especially for the region itself.
So I might jump in there. Having an academic background, one of my passion has always been doing research in regional locations with regional businesses. And why is this important? Well, I was recently at a conference, and, for 2 days I listened to lots of fantastic presentations. But what I didn't hear a focus at all on regional businesses or regional communities. And these regional businesses are the fabric of these communities. So if regional businesses don't survive, nor does the wider community. So, Murraylands, Riverlands was a perfect example of a regional location that were also a research partner of End Food Waste Australia. So this research partnership worked really, really well. And in fact, talking about collecting data, if it wasn't for Julie being on the ground with those trusted relationships with the business community, we would never have been able to collect any research. And maybe that is one of the challenges for future researchers, or the challenge of past research is that it's really difficult to collect on the ground information from small regional businesses. My PhD was was looking at the challenges of small regional exporters. And I know if it wasn't for the relationships that I had in that area, it would have been really difficult to collect any of that information. But it doesn't mean it's not possible, as we proved in the Murraylands and Riverlands. So about this, the data that we collected, we felt it was really important to get a cross-section of businesses involved in the research. So businesses, and these are small businesses only, Linda, so we really focused on the very small end of town that always miss out on really important research that we felt that we conducted. So the cross-section of businesses in the region, it was some of the businesses that were doing some great stuff in this food waste circular economy space. Some businesses that were thinking about it. They knew that they had to do something, but they hadn't yet, and some businesses that hadn't even thought about it. So over a 2-week period, thanks very much, Julie, in January, South Australian summer, and can I tell you, one of the days hit 44.
Oh, my God.
We met our businesses in paddocks, in packing sheds, in olive groves, in commercial and home kitchens, wherever and whenever those businesses were available. And can I add, it's a credit to Julie and the businesses that got involved. I think they volunteered approximately nearly 200 hours of their time in this project. So thank you very much for those Murraylands, Riverland businesses that were involved in this project.
So, Jo and Julie, I want to throw a little bit of a question in there, because we have touched on, especially within this season of the podcast, how challenging it is for those micro businesses, especially when they are wearing a lot of the hats and don't come from an academic background and don't have research funds and all of those sort of abilities. Is there a solution that you can think of that's viable, sustainable, and the best next step forward for micro businesses wanting to tackle food waste?
Well, Julie, I might jump in because, thank you for that intro, that segue. So what we did is we had all of these interviews, we collated the information, we analysed, along, because there was lots of reoccurring themes, some surprises, some you would expect. So I won't go through all our findings with you, but some of the key ones that were really specific to small food regional businesses was this. One of them was this balance between, feeding their family and their environmental responsibility, because they know that they have to do something, they want to do something, but I'm not talking, and this is not an extreme example, but they still, at the end of the day, they still need to feed their families. And, I didn't realise, Julie, at the time, this is the first time I visited that area and got on the ground with these small businesses, just how damn tough it is out there in the regions. Julie, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I think in terms of some of the findings, what we found was much of the innovation was coming out of necessity. These are small businesses, so to them, waste, most of them really were looking at that as being a business problem and were actively creating new products or, actively thinking about how they could do something different with it, because it really is, to them, another potential profit at the very least,
Yeah. Yep.
And what we did certainly find was varied experience and knowledge in how to take it to the next step from there. So that's more in that, commercialisation and linking with other businesses or with other entities, whether that be government or, grants or whatever that might be. Yeah.
So talking about grants, that was another one of our findings. A lot of the businesses that we interviewed had this perception that government policies did not reflect the realities of small agricultural businesses. We even had one business tell us, and Julie, you'll know who I'm talking about, that due to the biosecurity issues in the Riverlands, they made the decision not to expand their business because moving fruit outside that region was just too damn hard and too damn expensive. And just to add that, on this biosecurity issues in the region, it's a fairly contentious issue with most of the businesses we interviewed. And I, for one, confess, I do not totally understand the issue. But what we heard was that it was really challenging to those small businesses in those regional locations. And I don't know, Jules, if it's too contentious for you to come in on this finding or not, but did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, I think I will leave any detail around that to people more qualified than myself. But what I would say is that one of the things that it did also demonstrate was how important place-based knowledge is, because the biosecurity issue we're talking about, fruit fly, is primarily a riverland part of our region's an issue, where for the Murraylands it'd be other things. So, and I'm quite sure if we looked broader than our region, most regional areas would have something that is very place, it's about their place, which impacts and would shift how they'd move forward potentially. So I think that was probably a broad one, Jo, that, we talked about more after the fact, how important that place-based piece was.
And then another finding, and this is probably not surprising, is that these small business face this challenge regarding market and consumer expectations, particularly around the appearance of a product. I think, Linda, our listeners would be absolutely blown away if they knew just how much fruit or produce we were talking about. This is the produce that potentially doesn't make the supermarket cut or the supermarket specifications. The amount of fruit that we are talking about is quite tragic. But I think the most critical finding was that we found was that businesses were not just looking for a traditional isolated training program on how to reduce and transform food waste. They don't want to be told how to suck eggs. They actually know the solutions. What they want is, and this word's been absolutely used to death, but I don't know what other word to use. What they want is a collaborative approach to training that involves the whole community, so that they all do this shared learning. And this came directly from businesses, and they all, and there were so many businesses had some great ideas on how to do this. So many of these businesses felt that working together on something like a pilot project specific to the region, whether it be the Riverland or the Murraylands, would be more effective than just trying to implement training on their own. So this then led us to a shift from our conventional, training module to more like a train the facilitator model, where local leaders or innovators or influencers were actually trained to guide and support the local community as a whole throughout these pilot projects. And so what we're hoping is that then that will spread the word. These pilot projects will demonstrate the benefits of implementing food waste circular economies into their business systems.
Yeah, thanks for that. That provides much more of a community-based approach, which I think ties into something that, Julie, you were just talking about as far as specific issues which are for regions such as the Murraylands and, let's say, the fruit fly problem. And so if there is more of that collaboration, and I'm trying to recall the quote, but I know that in order to tackle a problem, first you need to understand it. And if you're talking to someone in Broome from down in Antarctica, two completely different climates,
Absolutely.
Completely different ways of managing their food and business and all sorts of issues, it doesn't translate for me just from a clearly logical / approachable way in order to move forward if we can't actually understand what's going on locally on the ground within that community.
And so one of the quotes that we got, Julie, and this will answer your question, is that businesses need to see a reason to believe. And, you know, working together on a specific project that's place-based is a way to showcase that reason to believe, and therefore to get others, to encourage others to get on board. So it's not about just, you know, showing them how to, you know, suck eggs. We're demonstrating a reason to believe. Well, the community is using these pilot projects and a facilitator approach to training.
Does that require ongoing improvement and reinforcement or reflection as well, though? Because I'd like to think that the fruit fly problem wouldn't be here for the next few decades. So from a research point of view, and Julie, if you wanted to maybe speak to this a little bit, how do you then tackle the overwhelm of trying to present data that is necessarily community-minded, but also going to give an overall solution for small businesses at the same time?
I think when you start talking about overall solutions, I think it's actually a ongoing activities within a business, and I think, you know, businesses change over time, and opportunities and markets change, you know, so I think there's a natural evolution that would actually occur, and certainly from our findings and what we're proposing, you know, moving forward, the actual that community of businesses, that itself would grow, and they would bring new elements into it as well. So obviously in the early stages, you know, there's a select group of probably those first, you know, very more motivated in this space businesses, but, you know, that grows. That's the whole point. They then become themselves the influencers, and, you know, we're really strong in through this project in that concept of community of practice, and that's part of the scalability, you know, moving forward, you know, beyond our region. I mean, at the moment, we're still just talking about the pilot project that we've done, Murraylands and Riverland. You know, that's in itself is in a silo. You know, that's not what this is about in the broader context. You know, we're talking, you know, scalability nationally.
Yeah.
And on that note, Linda, we partially developed what we now call the Food Waste Transformers program. So that this is the train the facilitator approach, and within that, each of their modules trains or guides the facilitator to this continual improvement and scalability and you know, ongoing review, and then how to scale up again to the next project in that area. So the training project hopefully captures all of those elements to keep this project. So it's as Julie said, so it's an ongoing project, and hopefully there'll be this ripple effect. So we'll have all of these mini pilot projects happening within each region, and then wouldn't it be great if other regions got on board, so that you know, we'd be creating this community of like-minded people across regional Australia.
And I think just on from that is really important when we talk pilot projects. We're talking about action, and there's nothing that a business person, large or small business, irrelevant, wants to see. They want to see action. At the end of the day, that's what matters. So certainly that's been in our mind as well, and that came through very strong in the research we did as well. No great surprise, of course. They want to see action.
Did you think there would be as much enthusiasm and community-focused collaboration theme that came through when you first dived in?
I might answer that one actually, because I'm, know most of these businesses relatively well. And look, I have to be honest and say I was a little surprised at how many of the businesses we were talking about ideas that were very much in that collaborative space. I was genuinely surprised. I mean, I could name a few where it didn't surprise me, and that's absolutely how they operate their business. They're highly involved in community, etc. But yeah, I think in general, I was surprised. To
That's
hear
excellent.
so many of the ideas and things that they were, brainstorming about. We're in that space.
Yep. So what you're talking about action, what are the next steps for this initiative moving forward?
I might just step in there first, Linda. So what Julie and I hate more than anything is that our fabulous looking report, and it is fabulous looking report, all it does is find its way to someone's shelf. What a waste of resources, not just ours, but those 200 hours of voluntary hours of the businesses in the Murraylands Riverland. So what we've been able to achieve from this project is a partially completed training program that focuses on the facilitator structure or concept. So we need to be able to complete the rest of the training project. We would like to also do some research in other regions just to really cement our findings and also do some testing. But the next step is really about having the resources to fully develop the Food Waste Transformers program. And Julie, next steps overall?
Yeah. So part of this project was to actually look at that national rollout and the scalability. That was actually a part of our research, of which we're just sort of finalising at the moment. And so we actually have identified 4 possible options to move forward. And certainly we ran an analysis process and what have you, and had criteria and the like, which I won't bore you with, but, it's sound. And it'll be in the report if anyone really wants to read it. But essentially option 4 is what, came out as, the resounding option. And that was very much a multifaceted option. It brought in the training program that Jo's talked about. As she said, only module 1 has actually been developed. So there's 6 more modules to be developed. So that's, cornerstone. That needs to occur. Moving on from that, we need to expand it into some other regions so that we can refine and test, and again look a little bit more at that place-based piece to ensure that what is being developed as a training package is robust. And whilst that is occurring, actually for the Murraylands and Riverland region, go into that sort of phase 2, which is the action piece, is to actually start, 15 odd businesses starting to go through the actual program as it's being developed. So again, we can refine and test and review to ensure that when we're at that point, which is realistically still probably a couple of years away, it's very robust for national rollout and can happen fairly quickly. Looking at the national rollout, we have been exploring the Regional Development Australia network. For those listeners that don't understand what RDAs are about, they are actually national. There's 52 RDAs across Australia, so not-for-profits. We're not government, although we work incredibly closely with government. So just even there alone is sort of a natural way that this potentially could be rolled out. And again, that's something we're exploring and what we're doing. Yeah. What have I forgotten there, Jo? I think that was I
think you've covered it very well. Thank you, Jules.
There you go.
So before we head into final thoughts and final words, I know that a lot of small businesses start at home on the kitchen table, or a business idea written on the back of a napkin and those sort of things. And I know from the short time that I've had the pleasure of producing the Food Waste Matters podcast, I've certainly taken a lot of what I've heard and what I've learnt into the home as well, because a lot of small businesses start at home, and we are much more aware now of food waste. And so in your years of research and the academic side of stuff, putting that into practice in your own homes, have you noticed a considerable difference? And do you have any specific stories that you could both share with me as far as your own food waste journey?
Well, I could probably start. One of the things I do now is one of the recommendations that came out of some consumer research that was done by End Food Waste Australia is that you don't need to shop for 7 nights or for 7 meals, because there's always leftovers, and leftovers are really tasty, let's face it. So I honestly only shop for 4 nights now, but still have enough food for 7 nights. There's not much in the fridge, so I only shop when I need to shop. But do you know what it is for me, you know, because a lot of us are just so busy, and the last thing you want to do at night, especially if you're a mother with kids, is what are we going to have for dinner? Oh, it's so fantastic to be able to grab some, because I quite often freeze my leftovers, and so it's so easy to just grab something out of the freezer. So it not only saves me time, because that's my big bugbear, is having to finish work and cook a meal or think about what to cook more than anything.
Yeah.
But it also actually saves the hip pocket. And now my daughter, who's full-time mum and she's got 2 kids, she's doing that as well. And it's amazing how much time and money you can save by just implementing that tiny thing. And also my wheelie bin, because of that, is not full at the end of the week anymore.
No, same. It's such a considerable difference.
Yeah, so I'm becoming this advocate.
What about for you, Julie?
For me, a couple of things probably for me. Perhaps this one was born out of I didn't want to cook, but I have 3 children, teenagers, so certainly at least once a week we have eat out the fridge night, and you know, and they have pretty much the rule they can have one other item. So you know, it's amazing how creative you can actually get. When, you know, just to use things. So that's certainly one thing that I've done, you know, for a while now. And the other thing, probably through my journey, has been more, you know, working with businesses on a couple of other projects as well. So I've been exposed to some of the awesome products that they're actually producing. So I've actually definitely increased the amount of local produce that's actually in my fridge or pantry. So for me, you know, to have local olive oil, one of our producers does dehydrated meals, ready meals, literally, you know, add water, put it in the slow cooker, that kind of thing. So, you know, just to have those sorts of things running through my home, I feel like I'm actually helping business food waste. Yeah.
I wanted to just add, because I'm also a working mum of 4. Yeah. And one of the biggest problems that I was seeing is the food waste in the lunchboxes coming back at the end of the day. And so we've actually started batching our lunchbox snacks, our lunchbox meals. So we'll do a big cook of maybe an oat slice or something and freeze it all. And so they've basically got enough food for their lunch boxes, except for lunch, which they'll often take leftovers as well. So we do all of our lunch boxes for 2 weeks at a time, and then they just grab a bag each morning and chuck something from the freezer in there, and they're coming home with hardly anything in their lunchbox, and it saves hours and hours a week of time, because they were trying to do it in the morning around everybody getting breakfast, and I stopped doing it years ago. They have to do it now. But we've saved so much in just that task of doing it in 10 minutes on a Sunday evening, once a fortnight, instead of it sometimes was taking them 20 or 30 minutes in the morning to do one meal, one lunchbox, sorry. So, yeah, it's great to implement it not only in the business sense but in the home sense, because I think it all filters out and it's all connected as well. Yeah. So, Jo, Julie, do you have any final words that you want to add as we wrap up for today?
I just think what I would like to say is I hope our project doesn't sit on someone's shelf, and that potential funders see the value in our project on helping regional food businesses reduce and transform food waste, because food waste doesn't have to be waste. It's just another product and a potential revenue stream.
Yeah, well said. Julie?
For me, I think I'm hoping that we can be the start of the ripple. So that's what I'd like to see. Yeah, that community of practice, and I don't just mean for our region, although that's close to my heart. I'd like to see that for the nation.
Amazing. Well, thank you both so much for your time today, and yes, onwards with the fight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Linda.
So we've just heard from Jo and Julie, and a big thank you to both of them for joining me as I turn the tables for this episode. I cannot think of two better people to have in your corner, as they really understand regions and make sure they're not forgotten. It's also great to hear both the academic and research that is happening, as well as the stories behind the project itself and how paramount regional businesses are to community engagement. To find out more about the project itself, or Honey and Fox, RDAMR, and End Food Waste Australia, you can find all the resources and links in the show notes for this episode, or on the Food Waste Matters website at www.foodwastematters.com.au. When you visit the website, you also have the option to subscribe to be the first to know when episodes are released from this very chair where I'm sitting right now. There you'll also find a full podcast archive, which includes show notes and guest contact details for all of our previous episodes. And of course, if you have any questions, feedback, or if you'd like to be a guest on our show, feel free to reach out to us at foodwastematters@honeyandfox.com.au. Remember, the fight against food waste is a collective effort, and in particular, it includes regional small businesses. Taking action achieves the best results. So, until next time, keep up the fight.